let's see, bring a special guest on. Let's hope he's still here. What's going on, everyone? Marriage Issues, episode 26. We have we do have a special guest today. We'll be talking about attraction, trust, and respect. Let me see if it's still here.
Love and connect.
All right. What's going on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man.
Okay, 1 second.
Can you hear me?
All right, 1 second. Can you hear us now?
I can, yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Good.
Sorry for the technical. It's the first time we're trying to do this type of hookup right here. So
No, I'm just glad that, your lady was sitting there correcting you the whole time, and I got to witness that, That was my,
I was trying to, but I could not help it.
oh, I love it.
awesome. Everything is working. When you have so many audio hookups, we're trying to make sure we're also live and take care of our people on YouTube and Facebook. It gets a little bit rough. Or too many, what do you call it? Okay.
Plugins.
Too many audio sources and outsource, whatever you want to call it. There's too many outputs and inputs. So I guess I had to. That's why. Give me a second. Yes, thank you for coming, man. It's
My pleasure, man. My pleasure.
honor. Yeah. Awesome. The good news right now is that everyone can hear us everywhere on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at the same time. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, that means we're extra special.
Right. You get it. Exactly. All right. So we do have. I intentionally don't tell you too much about the topics we're going to cover or anything like that because I like it to be organic, right? Because we're in this place in this world right now where there's so many experts and quote unquote coaches and stuff like that, and it's not like we weren't there before because professors also teach in universities things they don't necessarily live, right? They teach from a textbook. However, that's the part that when we give these excuses, we don't tend to touch. But they do have a textbook that they're referencing for the most part, and those textbooks have real life stories and real application. There is a course. There's also the application version of the course, right? So I feel like the best value we can bring with this type of masterclass is to make sure that it's authentic, it's organic, and even if that means we have to put ourselves on the hot seat sometimes. But yeah, Joseph, we met in Clubhouse.
We did. That was fun, man.
Yeah, and I'm still going to ask you some questions with regards to Clubhouse, where it is today, when we get to it. And but with that, before I move on too forward, meet my queen. This is Lola.
Hi, Joseph. How you
It's a
doing?
pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you. I heard a lot about you.
Thank you so much. It's also an honor to meet you, and I've encountered you in Clubhouse, so I know you a little bit. Yes.
Wonderful.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey. How did you get here?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I'm a attentive father. I'm a loving husband. I'm a loyal son and brother and honorable friend. I've gotten to this place here today all the way from just putting my spiritual journey and spiritual growth and personal emotional growth first. I would say I wasn't always a good man. I would say I've lived two lives. One was low character and integrity, suffering from mental health issues, addiction to drug and alcohol, as well as the objectification and possession of women, to being on the other side where I've transcended all of that. And now not only do I lead with my highest integrity and purpose, but I challenge others too, because I understand what the power of transformation really is, and that it's available to anyone if they're willing to look in the mirror and put in the work. So I think one of the main reasons that you and I connected most was we both have a passion for relationships, and that, you know, kind of spot it, you got it. You're like, all right, I see Ola putting out some wisdom, and that comes from practical experience and application. And I think you saw the same thing in me, that I wasn't just throwing off the cuff. I was putting out real value, because, you know, pain is a great motivator for change, and it's the only way that we can experience transformation. It doesn't come from comfort and familiarity, you know. So one of the main reasons why I'm here today is because I'm passionate about ensuring people have what they need in order to be successful in their relationships, because it's the number one key indicator. If you're successful in that area, you can have success in life, because all of life is relationships. My relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, my son, my family, my job, you guys, you know, and honoring commitments and showing up in my highest integrity is how a way, right, that I can say, all right, let's go down the relationship game today. But, you know, marriage specifically is a very important topic, because it's treated real loosely in the American culture. And I think that was one of the things too that you and I connected on, is because, you know, I don't take it lightly standing up in front of 200 people before God, telling someone that I'll honor them for the rest of my life, and think that that's just something that I do every day, you know?
Every day, right?
Yeah. So that's why I'm here, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Right on.
I like it.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah, we did meet in Clubhouse, and that was like maybe 2-3 months ago. And then I ended up on your podcast. I really had a good time on that podcast. I even had a better time. Believe it or not, there are some of us that love listening to our own voice. Listening to it, and some of the other episodes you've had since then, and I've noticed that it's a variety, because the truth is that our lives has varieties in it too, you know. But like you said, it all comes down to all these different relationships. And I do hear people sometimes say, I need to be single so I can find myself. And I always laugh, like, okay, you're not going to find yourself unless you pay attention to the relationships you are in, because that's when your insecurities will rise to the top, for you to learn how they work, right? But we're actually more interested also in having this conversation with you, because we're in an interesting space in the history of mankind. We are enlightened, but our enlightenment is a good chance it's going to destroy us. We know it's destroying relationships already, and there's a balance that needs to be struck. That's not close to it. And you can hear it when people are talking, when people are giving advice. It's mostly unsolicited advice, especially also on Clubhouse.
For
But
sure.
what do you think in terms of the balance? Have you really paid attention to this part, especially from a man's standpoint? Because there's a rhetoric that men have figured it out, and we need to hold women accountable. Now, granted, it's black people that are doing that to themselves right now. But also, I feel like sometimes our world is basically all we know, and we assume that the rest of the other world are better than us. So if you can speak to that, the balance between the enlightenment that we're finding out. You know, there are people looking for NFTs right now to help them. You know, they want to outsource their relationship to NFTs these days now, right? Can you speak to that?
Well, I would say that I think quite often in American culture, we have a deep, deep obsession with knowledge.
Mm.
And we have very little regard for wisdom.
Wow.
So this is something that we're indoctrinated in our educational system. We come up memorizing information, taking tests, and we're graded on our ability to know. Right? But I think in Eastern culture, and in terms of the word that you used, enlightenment is only achieved through unknowing. So if I'm consistently trapped in a space that I have to know, I'm actually doing myself a disservice for progressing myself spiritually, emotionally, right? And it's a deep, deep cultural context that is incredibly hard to unravel, right? And we also get trapped in this place of, if I don't know, people will think less of me. Right? So I have to have it all figured out, right? But I think you and I would both agree that as a man, if I can get up in front of a room in a corporate office, put up my hand and say, I don't know, can you go over that again? With supreme confidence in everything that I am and my own dignity, that's very attractive to women.
Yes.
Right? So how do we get people to that place of saying, you know what's going on in the world? Well, there's a lot of things I don't know. Maybe I should listen. Right? Or, hey, there's a lot of things going on, and some people may like this belief of mine and they may not. The world has never been short on tragedy, man. The world has never been short on evil. Right? Like, there's been stuff like this going on since the history of man, because there's a bunch of men and humans running around.
Humans, yeah.
It's going to be crazy all the time because humans do a lot of dumb stuff. And I think what's happening though is that people are trapped in knowing and believing their way is the right way. But the reality is that the only thing certain in life is that it's uncertain, and you're going to die.
And you're going to die. Yeah.
That's about it, right? So everything is not permanent. I do think that we are really hurting right now. I believe we're going through something that the world has never seen. It's different, but it's the same in the sense that I know this pandemic within itself, we're not going to really understand the mental health implications of that for the generations to come for a while. You know, I know specifically in America in terms of, you know, how Black people are feeling in terms of inequality and racial injustice. You know, I was somebody that I spent a lot of time in trouble with the law growing up, Department of Corrections. So I was never short of seeing, you know, racial injustice in the judicial system.
Right.
But I believe, like you said, we have to find some sort of balance between, you know,
knowledge,
perpetuating that and standing up and saying, okay, I'm going to continue. Yes, this is true. And these generations have felt that pain and that carries over to, I'm not going to continue to pay testimony to that. And I'm going to transcend that. Right. And I know the brothers that I hang out with, that's their beliefs. And I support them. I do have other friends too that believe the total opposite of that. And I hold them in safety and trust in those beliefs as well, because that's their experience. It's not mine.
It's not yours.
I have to show up for them if I love them.
Right. Now, marriage. Now we're going to dive into marriage. There's a lot of, we're Nigerians, okay? We're Nigerian, quote unquote, Americans. We have to remember that part, right? But so we there's a lot of stereotypes, precisely around the differences in how white person or Americans, people in the Western world, view marriage in a lot of ways, and the way people quote unquote cultural, because there's this high horse thing too with people that have connections with a third world country, that they're more cultural, you know. And I've been around. I know that, in fact, the very precise meaning of culture means everyone has some kind of culture.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Just different.
but there's this high horse belief that we're the only one that have culture, and we lead with that in a lot of ways. So there's a couple of stereotypes. I think my wife have a couple of them. We want to ask you, um, with respect to, uh, is it really different the way we look at things, or is the same things at its core? So I don't know. You have them ready?
Yeah, I mean, there's one about mother-in-laws,
In-laws.
like for example, in Africa, we think that, it's just a Nigerian thing that we have evil mother-in-laws. They just don't like their daughter-in-laws. And people think that if you're married to somebody in the Western world, like an American, you're less likely to deal with mother-in-law issues. So I don't know. I don't know how
So is
true
this
that
true?
is.
All mother-in-laws that are Americans, but they're perfect. They.
First of all, let me just say that when I was rolling with you guys in those African rooms, we were in one of those, and those girls were going off about their mother-in-laws,
Yeah,
and I'm
Yeah.
like.
it's
I'm
a
like
big
it
deal.
was it was great for me, right? Like spending time with y'all in those rooms is wonderful learning for me in terms
No.
of cultural context, which I'm always just trying to soak up that stuff, because that's the flavor of life, right? That's that excitement. I think the fact that the mother-in-law relationship is different in any kind of way, in terms of mindset, I don't think it's different. I
Mm.
think one of the things that I did notice though is that there's definitely a difference in boundaries. You
Mm.
know,
Boundaries, yeah.
like the mother-in-law, from what I was listening to and looked up in terms of the Nigerian culture, she's just walking up in her son's house like it's her
That's
house.
right.
You know
You
what I
can't
mean?
stop
Like
her.
there's nothing you can do, and it's going to be a little bit of a fight.
Yeah.
And she's just going to be like, yeah, my baby needs to eat. I'm going to cook him some food, and
Hmm.
and then the wife is like, no, that's what I'm doing now. Whereas I think in American culture, that still happens, but not as
Mhm.
quite as frequently. It's more so that you separate from the family unit and you go build your own family unit.
Mhm.
I know, growing up, one of my best friends was Puerto Rican, and it was the same thing. It was like his parents' house was like the Ramada Inn for his family, and it was just like everyone's always together in the house. No one knocked. They would walk into the house. They would stay there. The mother-in-law lived with them. Um,
Mhm.
it's my belief in terms of American culture. We don't really hold the elderly in high regard, and I think it's a shame because, like I said
Mm.
before, we place such a high emphasis on knowledge and not on wisdom.
Hmm.
But who has the most wisdom? The
Hmm.
oldest people, right? Like,
Right.
and we'll go ahead and just ship them off to the home, and they can
And
live
that's
on their
it.
own.
They're done with
That's
their own
it.
life.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mm.
right. So, um, it's one of those things where the mother-in-law thing. I mean, and personally, I'll say I have a great relationship with my mother-in-law,
Hmm.
um, and it's like walking on a tightrope sometimes in terms of boundaries, right?
Hmm.
And I think the biggest thing on my end is practice a certain level of assertiveness, which is
Mm.
defined as looking out for my own best interest while still respecting others. As
Mm.
long as I'm doing that and I'm showing up in a place of love rather than judgment and
Mm.
accusing people of doing stuff, it just seems to work out, right? And you can build a strong relationship to where they're almost like a set of parents. That's what it is for me. And they've always welcomed me that way. I do have friends and clients that have terrible relationships with mother-in-laws, and it's an absolute nightmare,
It's a nightmare. Right.
And again, I think it just goes down to the big B word, man, boundaries.
Boundaries. Okay. Well, I think we will talk about boundaries. So what you're saying, these emotions, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
How they play out may be different from place to place. Granted, I completely agree with you that the entitlement that comes with a mother-in-law, from our culture, from an African Nigerian standpoint, is gross, to say the least. And because of that, people it's toxic. It's a lot more toxic, because if you're already leading with, you can't tell me nothing, in a home unit, a family unit that you don't even belong in the first place, like by all meanings, by all sense of meanings, you don't belong there, but somehow you feel entitled to it and no one can tell you nothing. I think that can present additional layer of problems. But at the very core of it, the reason why people have issues with mother-in-laws is because these are relationships. You do have a relationship with your mother-in-law on both sides. She has a relationship with your mother as well, and those relationships have to be nurtured. You have to be aware of them, because they're real. Because your relationship with your mother-in-law affects your relationship with your wife. Because this is a very important part of who she is. And she may even want to be on your side and protect you, but she's going to be in a conflicted position sometimes and can make her feel drained. And also the same thing for the husband, So that's interesting. Thank you for spinning up for us like that.
I have another question, because now the issues of the daughter-in-laws, where they actually struggle, is when the man is not stepping up.
Right.
So the man of the family feels like if he says certain things to his mom, that is disrespectful. In Africa, you don't say nothing back to your parent. How can you balance that out? Because it's a real struggle for the wife. The wife end up, she's lost. She feels like she doesn't have a voice in her own home, because every time she talks about it to her husband, he's like, oh, well, that's mom. I can't do anything about that. So, and I know so many women that just say, I wish my husband can. I'm not asking him to cut off his mom or disrespect his mom, but I just want him to step up and make me feel like I'm a woman in my own house, not a slave.
Wow, that's powerful.
So
I think what surfaces for me, first of all, is it's incredibly difficult to unravel that deep of subconscious imprinting of not only cultural context, but generational context. So generation after generation, this is how it's been in Nigerian culture, right?
Yes.
So then the second thing I would say is that there's two essential factors to the word no. It's dignity and freedom. And when we say yes, right? Like in this instance, when I'm saying it's okay for my mother to come in my home and act as if she's my wife in front of my wife, and then my wife is upset with me because I didn't tell her, no, that's not okay, and I allowed it, which is basically saying yes, I am then robbed of my dignity and my freedom. Conversely, if I say no when I wish to say no, and everything in my body wants me to say no, and I do that, I get to keep my dignity and my freedom, right? So this has far more to do with the wife, and it has everything to do for the man showing up for himself and what it is that he wishes to shape for his own reality of his own life. I know my mother, since, like I said, I had was a troubled youth, and she had to kind of just overstep a lot to take care of me. And I think I was about 5 years into my transformation, and she is still doing and saying all these things and worried about all these things, and I need to do this, and you should be doing that, and this and that, blah blah blah. And my mom and I have a really, really powerful relationship, and a lot of how we handle things like that is through humor or sarcasm, because it kind of it cuts the knife of stabbing or going at, right? So I just said, hey, Mom, I'm gonna go grab a pen and a paper, and then I'm gonna sit here at the table with you, and I'm gonna take notes on exactly how I should live my life. Because basically what you're saying is that you didn't do a good enough job of raising me, that now you have to tell me how to do it.
Wow.
Right? And it's like, it's like, okay, it was very shocking, but then we talked about it, and it's like, Mom, you did such a great job that I'm self-sufficient. I can cook, I can clean, I iron, I do all my own laundry, I do all this stuff. I still do it. My wife don't even touch my stuff, right? Because my mom taught me how to do all that stuff. It's like, you taught me values, you instilled all this stuff in me. I don't need you over here doing all this stuff for me. You set me up to be a great self-sufficient man. Are you going to let me live? Or are you going to continue to control and possess? Because that's not love.
No.
That's control. And it's a sickness, yeah.
Yeah, that's always a big deal for from what I've seen. People are always confuse love with control, or worse, they feel like so you can be held accountable. Right? Yeah. People confuse all the technical terminology, textbook terminology, a.k.a. boundary, things like that. People have them all mixed up all over the place. Narcissism, right?
Oh yeah.
Because people are reading books, and kudos to people that are reading books, right? But there's also application, right? So that's going to take me back to the boundary stuff, right? If I come to my wife and I'm about to have a conversation with my wife, and I lead, like, let's set some boundaries here. There's a certain level of there's certain energy that is comes on her, leading that conversation like that, right? By pulling out the textbook terminology, boundaries, right? Now, there are ways I could still set boundaries without ever using the word boundaries.
Yep.
Right? So, the same thing with controlling, same thing with insecurity, right? None of those things are actually crime in the court of law. You can't go to the court and say, hey, my wife is a narcissist, so can you put her in jail?
Exactly.
There's a reason why that can't fly, right? It's because they're subjective, right? Who is observing based on whose standard, right?
Yeah, it's not against the law to be an asshole.
No, it's not. Literally. Like literally, right? So where is the balance there? I want to set boundaries, but I could be wanting to set boundaries and be an asshole. Do you believe that's possible, that I want to set boundaries and I'm an asshole at the same time? And if you believe that, how would you explain how to find the balance there again? Balance again. Because application requires balance. It's a balancing act.
I think the biggest thing is that people are either acting out of love or they're acting out of fear. The reason why, if I were a Nigerian man, I wouldn't say no to my mother and set that boundary is because I would have a fear that she would think less of me. But if I understood,
that's negative always.
But if I understood that by me saying no might be the biggest way I could love myself to then strengthen a relationship with my own dignity and my wife, then maybe I would act upon it. So then I would go a step further and say, okay, who are going to be the Nigerian men that are going to lead the pack to change the culture? Right? Because it has to start somewhere.
Yes.
You know, all the pain that we're going through in this country, it has to start somewhere. And it ain't gonna be comfortable in the beginning. Right? Yeah. So then what I would say in terms of boundaries is the majority of the time it's encapsulated in the word no.
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 Okay.
And no,
Right?
does not mean you don't love your mother.
Right.
Love
no.
has like I said, it's the most loving thing that I could do.
Right.
And I think that the biggest thing is that people are wrapped up and there's a lot of confusion about love.
Right.
Or right, self-love and selfish. Well, if I do that, then I'm just being selfish. She can come over whenever she wants. Well, not according to your wife, she can't, that you said you're going to marry.
Right.
You know,
a commitment,
right. Yeah. So there's this game that we play, right? This dance, I guess you will, of
yes.
I have to stand firmly within my values and stay convicted. Right? Those things that sorry, you there? I think I lost you for a second.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So it's one of those things where I think...
Give me 1 second, sorry. 1 second. Wanted to make sure I put the phone on airplane mode.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, I think getting clear on your values is a very important step for that, right? Because until, like, for me, it's love, faith, integrity, money, legacy. Love, faith, money, integrity, legacy. I know that through and through. That's the barometer of my behavior. When I show up in that, right, and I elevate my behavior to hit those values, and I check in a contemplation every night to see how I did, my self-worth follows. Then confidence follows, right? And when I do that, then ultimately I build that. It's compounding day after day. Well, then I have the confidence to say no when I wish to say no to people in my life. Right? Because that's just not the vision that I have for my life.
And no means you're saying yes as well to
yourself,
other aspects of your life that's probably more of a priority, or like you said, has a more of a downstream effect on strengthening even that precise relationship, because that person will have no choice than to respect you when you are telling them no, as opposed to leading them on, because you're leading somebody on if you're acting out of fear. If you're saying yes out of fear, you're leading them on. It's not honest.
Yep. And what does that do? That builds resentment.
Yes.
Resentment.
Yes.
You're killing the relationship effectively.
Yeah, because you're not showing up in your highest integrity. Right? Because when you say no to someone else or something, you're saying yes to yourself.
Yes.
Right? It's literally that simple,
It's a yes.
So
it's a yes that's backed up with love, because it's a no to the part that maybe you've considered is the right thing to do, but you're operating out of fear. Speaking of right thing to do, we gotta talk about right and wrong as well too. Yes.
Another thing is, I stopped on Clubhouse today and I walked in a conversation, and the title is, should husbands celebrate their wives on Mother's Day?
You went to Clubhouse without me?
Yeah, today I was just
I haven't been in Clubhouse today. That's like a first.
I usually am not on Clubhouse, but out of curiosity, I was looking to see what they were talking about. And they were talking about, should husbands celebrate their wives on Mother's Day? Does that take away from your mother if you celebrate your wife on Mother's Day? I know personally for me, on Father's Day, I don't even think about it. I celebrate my husband and my fathers. That's my father-in-law and my father, because I believe my husband is my rock and he's a father to me, a brother, a friend, a lover, everything. So for people to be asking this question, I was like, what's going on here? Is it that mothers are now envious of, their sons celebrating them with their wives? What do you think about that?
I think you break it down purely to an emotional standpoint. And
right,
when you share joy, it's doubled.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So if I share something that brings joy to my life with you, Ola and Lola, that makes you happy and joyful, right? Because it's very infectious. It's contagious. That energy, that
Yes.
emotion is contagious. So
Yes.
Yes.
to think that the belief of celebrating my mother at the same time as my wife would do anything other than double the amount of joy
Right.
is absolutely toxic and not
Yeah.
correct, right?
I agree
Now, now
100%.
convert. Now, conversely, if I share an issue that I have going on with you, or I share a trouble,
Mm.
it's cut in half
Right.
because now I've shared it with you, and I get relief from sharing that
Yes.
with you, and you love me for sharing that with you.
Mm-hmm.
So a trouble shared is cut in half. A joy shared is doubled.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also another way of saying that is whatever you focus on, this is law of attraction, positive or negative expands.
Mm-hmm.
So if your focus is always the worst case scenario, right? In every angle, it's just gonna expand.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
what's the flip side of this? What's the best case scenario here? Best case scenario, I can celebrate both of them. Doesn't have to be the same time. They don't have to cross each other's boundaries. Yes, they can be in the same space. By the
Right.
way, um, somebody brings up something negative, find a loving way to shut that down before it even expands beyond. Because if you now sit down there and you want to, here's another tricky one for people, right? They want to explain to the next person why it is so right, but you're effectively focusing on the
On the
negative
negative.
emotions and the vibes by even taking time apart to try to explain why it is such a. How about you say, I got this, don't worry, you trust me, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right, good. Put a smile on your face. I love that smile. You do things like that. You take that attention away from that negative vibe and energy that maybe one person, because we can't help it. Sometimes some people just bring that to the zone, right?
Right.
But it's about learning how to kill it without killing them, right? In the process, right? The application can it's the same thing when you're trying to talk to a girl. It's the same thing. Like there's this thing that I have to be perfect when I'm talking to her, or no, you just have to introduce yourself.
Right.
Just say what's your name. You don't have to overthink it, right? But a lot of time, especially this men that I call them the modern men now, they want to explain everything and they're trying to hold women accountable to also understand everything from a logical standpoint. And what they're doing is they're bringing negative vibe,
Right.
and then they wonder why it never stops. And women perpetuate everything you bring to them. It's just what it is,
We'll double it for you.
Yeah, they multiply anything you bring to them.
compound, man. Well, the thing is, too, I think it's important to point out, Lola, you said envious.
Mm.
And
Envy.
what's the worst of the seven deadly sins?
Mm.
Envy. Envy is deteriorating to the soul.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And so again, like just from an emotional standpoint, if someone is coming at me with that type of behavior, that type of emotion, like, sorry, you're in the wrong.
Yeah.
And if
I'm
you're
out.
and if you're in my life, just like if you're in Ola's life, you're gonna get called out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
sorry.
But
Like
this men, they claim that. So some husbands claim that they don't post their wives because they want their marriage to be private, but yet they celebrate their mothers on their
What's your take on that?
on their Instagram.
Those are two
Fear.
topics, by the way. Those are two
Fear.
topics. Posting your significant other on social media and the envy thing, the competition, the
Sure.
territorial thing.
Even though
Fear.
the wife is asking for it.
It's all fear.
It's fair.
It's all fear. Like, what are you afraid of exactly?
Mm-hmm. False
Mm.
evidence appearing real.
Mm. Some people say, oh yeah, it's just a professional, I post this different professional stuff on that page. So that's just my private life. It all goes back to fear. Because I mean, even in these days that we're teaching branding and all this stuff, everyone knows that people want to connect with you. That means everything about you. What are you afraid of? Unless you work for the government, and I don't know. For the most part, I think we should talk about mostly the most part is really that fear thing. That fear. Let's go to attraction, man. Attraction, right? Attraction in a marriage. What's your understanding of it?
Ooh, my thinking on it is like attracts like. The energy that I'm vibrating at is what I'm going to bring into my life. And it just seems to me, the more and more that I raise my vibrations, the better and more blessed I am in my life. In terms of what it means in my relationship, if I'm vibrating at a lower level, that means that I'm impatient, I'm intolerant, I'm not a good listener, I'm not showing up for her, and I'm trapped in myself. If I'm vibrating at a high level and I feel connected, I can choose how I show up, and I can better understand what her needs are. In terms of from when I was attracting, women in my life, I always tell people I had to fix my picker, because I hear a lot of people talking about their exes all the time, and it's like the one common thing in all that is you. You're the one that kept picking them, and you're the one that stayed. So maybe if you want more, you should become more, and it wasn't until for me that I went and got help with a therapist in terms of relationships. I didn't grow up in a good, healthy environment in terms of my mother and father in a relationship. Right. I didn't have something to embody that off of. And I was carrying baggage from, I think you and I talked about this before, from relationship to relationship. And I had to rid myself of all that in order to really start attracting what I wanted in a relationship. I'm also a believer in becoming the type of man of what type of woman you want. So, if I wish to have a highly ambitious woman, then I should probably be a highly ambitious man. I've done a lot of research too on kind of what traits people in the world in general want to have in a relationship. And the number one is kindness. And that's universally across all cultures, across all generations. Right. So that was always my very first number one thing is this person kind? The other thing, so then I had to be kind, right? The other thing too is that as I was going along in my spiritual journey, it seemed like the closer that I got to God, the healthier the woman that showed up in my life was. Right? And just being keenly aware of what was happening, what I was attracting, what relationships were showing up. Right. And then also too, it goes back to what we were talking about as far as saying no to the ones that didn't work for me. Yes. Because I think too often people stay in things for fear of being alone rather than saying no and loving myself and moving on, right? So part of unblocking myself of all that baggage was also getting out of the way of just kind of dating and doing all these other things. And then ultimately, once I got real serious, like you said earlier, about focusing on and seeking a healthy, happy relationship, it seemed to just appear in my life. And it wasn't in the time frame that I thought it was going to be. It wasn't the person I thought it was going to be. It ultimately didn't start skyrocketing the way I thought it was going to be. It started as a disaster. And we built a friendship over time. and then ultimately went out on a date, and it was wonderful. And that was something I never did before. Most of the time it was like, hey, let's jump in the sack and we'll figure out all the details later. You know what I mean? Like, rather than like, hey, do I like this person? Do I like who they are? Do they have a relationship with God? Do we share the same values? What's their relationship like with their family? Do they talk to their family? You know,
Right.
all of the things that, like I said, I had to get clear on my values. And then once I embodied those on a consistent basis, I started attracting that into my life.
Because oftentimes on Clubhouse, what I hear is, oh, this guy's a narcissist. Oh, this lady is just a bitch. And I'm like, how do you attract such people?
That's the real question.
People forget to say, I attracted this person. Maybe
Yep.
there's something in my life that I need to change to attract better people. But they just go ahead and just point fingers, and we just don't believe in that.
Yeah.
We always, and they feel like you should hold somebody else accountable. I think you should always own your own mistakes. Hold yourself accountable, not other people, because that doesn't work. And hearing that from you just makes absolute sense.
Yeah. You said a very key word in there, and that's acceptance, right? And I think it's very important that, like, whether or not you like what reality is happening or you approve of it or the behavior, it has very little to do whether or not you accept it as reality, right? And practicing a daily habit of acceptance may not alter the circumstances of your life, but it will transform the way that you experience life altogether, because you're saying, yeah, that person is a bitch and I don't want them in my life anymore. But every Tuesday when they text me at 12:38 a.m., I still have them come over,
Right.
because I'm lonely,
Right.
right?
Who are we gonna
So
blame
it's
for
like,
that?
what do you really want? Because
Right.
your behavior shows that you want to hook up,
And
you're
that's what I
allowing
mean
that.
by honesty. You know, everyone's definition of honesty is just all over the place.
It's different.
People say, but that's just the truth, or
That's my truth.
I speak facts, and I'm like, all right, let's talk about honesty. But what is honesty if you're not being authentic? If you're not agreeing? If your outlook on life is clouded, what is honesty? Right? What you attract is you. You call it the picker, right? We call it the complainer. I want to know who's complaining because the person has the most leverage.
Yeah.
If you're complaining, you have leverage. You may not see that yet. Again, another reason why it's impossible for you to be honest. You cannot be honest when your outlook on life is clouded.
Right.
You know, we posted something on this same Instagram a few days ago about we don't focus on teaching honesty. We just don't. Because if I have to teach you honesty, if I have to say, hey, Joe, be honest, there's a good chance, right, that you were not willing to be honest, or you had a clouded idea of honest, or I'm expecting you to be honest based on my standard. Now we got a problem. Because we're speaking multiple different languages, right? So focusing on teaching honesty, unless I'm teaching my son just as a basic bare minimum integrity, you know, always be honest. If I'm talking to a grown 36-year-old man adult and I go, let me teach you how to be honest, that means they're not attaching pleasure to being honest. So
They don't value their integrity.
Or I'm even looking at best case scenario. They just don't know they're not being honest.
Sure. So that's a great point, right? And that's what I was going to bring up is self-deception is probably one of those strongest forces on the planet. It keeps people stuck more than anything else. Right?
Yes.
And it takes people like you and I and Lola as well, the work that we're doing, coaching, to pull people out of that blindness. Because, hey, just like everyone else, we have it too. Everyone has blindness.
We do. Everybody.
You know, it's just how it is. But Are you willing to, sit with somebody to explore? Are you willing to listen, right? One of my favorites of all time is, Marcus Aurelius Meditations. And, there's a quote that he has in there, and it says, if any man can show me or convince me I'm wrong in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. For I seek the truth, and the truth does no harm. The real harm is living in one's own ignorance and self-deception.
Yeah.
Right? So the reality is if Ola has the courage as a leader to point something out to me and check me on my character and integrity, I'm probably going to listen, because he's built up this amount of trust in my life, that how he shows up, and I'm going to take that, and it may sting, it may piss me off, I may even tell you to shut the F up, right? But then what I'll probably do is I'll take my nightly contemplation and I'll review it, because it will probably still be stinging, and I'll be like, oh shit, he was right. And then I'll circle back and be like, hey man, sorry for telling you to shut the F up. You were right. I wasn't looking at this right. But here's the thing. When someone looks at me and says, that's the truth, they're being totally honest. Because it's their truth, right? It's their truth.
It's their truth.
And the problem is that it's not the truth.
Yeah.
But it's his truth, right? And people confuse assessments and assertions all the time, right? Right. And here's the difference. Well, my ex was a girl. That's an assertion. We can prove it right or wrong it doesn't matter. It's a principle. It's truth. My ex was a bitch. Well,
okay.
Right? That's an assessment, right? Like how many people have you met, the first time meeting them, and you had another friend that said, this person's a jerk, or she's a bitch, or they're an asshole, or whatever, and then you meet them and you guys hit it off, and they're not like that at all.
Yeah, they're not like that at all. It happens all the time.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
And so then a lot of times when that happens, I'll question and be like, okay, well, what is it about that other person that said that to me that leads them to believe that, right? Because this person, is it that person? Is it that person? I don't know.
Yeah. It's probably more so of the experiences they had within that relationship. And that's what we have to be careful. If somebody comes to tell you about somebody else, like for example, people would tell me about their husband or wife, right? In our coaching business, we take it in as their truth, because they are basically telling us their experience. Yeah. Right? But also I know something, that because usually they are in a place of rock bottom, even if what they're saying is a little bit further away from perception, right? If their perception is different from reality, right? I still want them to share that perception with me. You see what I mean? Because it's their honest truth, and even if it's far from reality, at least I know where their mind is, so I can help them align with the leverage point that they have, So I agree with that 100%. When somebody says that's the truth, unless there are people that are liars. But we're talking about just when somebody is honestly talking to you and they say this is their truth, we take that with a grain of salt, because it's their truth, right? Yeah,
and the other thing that I would say, and we can, I guess we've beaten this one kind of to death, but, when I work with men, I always make sure to tell them, no matter what, the most important person in your world knows when you lie.
Yeah.
You, right? Yeah. And a little piece of your soul goes away every time you do it.
Because it's not real. And you have to keep up with that. That's even a whole lot of work on its own too. Yeah. Now let's talk about respect, trust, and submission. Your wife came to you, and she just can't find herself respecting, trust, or submission. Here's the very simple question: do you think respect, trust, and submission is a wife's duty?
Yes.
Okay. So now you got a problem. She's not. She's not in that space.
I think it's the duty of both of us.
No. You're changing my question. Right.
I think and if she's coming to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what she's seeking, and that's what she needs from me,
Mm-hmm.
it's my duty as a husband to show up in the manner in which would best serve her.
Okay, so you're twisting it. You're way ahead of me, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead. All right. I answered yes. All right. Now you go.
Right. You're way ahead of me because again, respect, trust, and submission, right? A lot of people, they're complaining that their wife is not submissive, does not respect me. They call it she's disrespectful, does not, and sometimes there's trust issues there, right? So now maybe we should take our trust for a second. At least that respect and submission part. We know what the major rhetoric is. Some people say we are supposed to submit to both of us supposed to submit. We get that top point. We also get the person that says, no, but submission, you're submitting to a mission. People try to explain and justify submission, right? In all type of different formats and ways, people get into this conversation, right? But it brings me down to one question. Usually the person complaining about this is the man, that the wife is not submissive. Usually a woman is not complaining that my husband is not submissive. That's usually not the case, right? So I want to focus on that direction, which is a woman to a man, right? So you said, yes, it's a duty, right? So we got a problem. Let's say your wife comes to you, not comes to you. You are in a space where you feel like your wife is not submissive. How would you handle that? Is my next follow-up question to your yes, since it's a duty.
That's a really great question. I would say that it starts with a conversation. All action is generated from conversations. No action takes place without it.
What does that look like?
So it starts with setting expectations. And it starts with, hey, on Saturday, is it all right if we have a conversation at 11:30? I know, we're going out on a date at later that night, but I want to have the conversation with you. Just some things that I want to talk about. And, is that all right with you? Just some things that I'm going through, I'm feeling, and I want to express them to you. Okay, great. Just set the stage. And we're setting expectations that it's going to be probably a serious conversation and a little bit uncomfortable, right? You don't just drop that. You don't drop that on them at 11:30 when you're tucking into bed after you brush your teeth, because it's going to be blowing up. Okay. So you set expectations first. Then, when you come into the conversation, I would sit with her exactly as as you're sitting next to Lola. I'm sitting next to her, not like this. Because that disposition, that body language is combative, right? Sits next to him, defenses are down. Hey, I'm starting to, get the feeling a little bit that, there's a lot of times where I feel like I really want to show up for you in the way that, you need me to show up. But you're not allowing yourself to go there. And it's projecting an aura and an energy that you don't need me, right? And what I would say is that there's often times I come to you and I'm searching for love, I'm searching for affection, I'm searching for intimacy, advice, and
she goes like this. Sorry to interject. And she goes like this. Why you say something that stupid that I don't need you? Why would you say something so stupid? How would you handle that? She pushed you away. Remember, you were holding her like this, right?
Sure.
And she just suddenly pushed you away. Why did you say something so stupid?
Well, I appreciate that you think my feelings are stupid. That's a great way to start a conversation. Also, don't put your hands on me.
Yeah, whatever, Joe.
That's what I would say. Yeah. Also, don't put your hands on me. If it escalated like that, then you go in a totally different direction. Then it's like I'm separating myself from the situation. Awesome. I'm not engaging in that conversation because she's not hearing what I'm saying.
She's not hearing it.
And she's not in that place. So then I would probably say, hey, I would probably just take a little bit of what I said and think about it. and then let's circle back later. You know?
Yeah.
I think there's a certain level of emotional intelligence
Yes.
and connection and intimacy that needs to be taken care of before you even engage in a conversation like that, or even to be talking about the topic of submission, because there's very, very deep beliefs about that word that are just not true. Right? And what I would say is that when, for instance, Lola, when Ola shows up and you can tell that he is submissive and he needs something from you in terms of connection or intimacy or advice, you're not sitting there judging them or thinking he's less of a man or that like he's just some little bitch. You're thinking, I feel honored. I feel I feel honored. But that's what goes through a man's head in terms of that. Like, oh, if I do that,
because of the
then
fear,
I'm like,
the insecurity.
But the reality is that in terms of kind of advanced level thinking of relationships, when someone comes to us in that manner and we're able to be of that level of service, to love them in that way, we feel honored. We feel privileged.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, for a man to get to that level, not only with his wife, but also to another man, with another man, is part of being in a healthy relationship that's two ways. And part of being submissive in a relationship is allowing the other to love you.
Yes.
Right? So when I go into that conversation and let's say she didn't push me away and she didn't treat me like a 15-year-old high schooler would treat me, hopefully a happy, healthy, emotional adult, I would say, hey, what do you have going on lately? Because it just seems like you're taking on a lot of everything in your life on your own. Right?
So you're looking for an opportunity to give.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, because quite often when people aren't willing to go to that level of submission, it's because they feel like they have to handle everything on their own, or their fear that their partner will think less of them by going to there, or that's just always that's what we've always done, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, again, I like to
thank you for handling that well.
Yeah, that was
Ship
really
it up
good.
a little bit.
I like to always refer back to Africa, because I grew up in Africa and I see a lot of examples of where women, just because they have a voice or they want to say something on maybe make decisions with their spouses, the men are quick to say, you're not being submissive.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be submissive right now. You're not being submissive. And to me, that seems manipulative.
Or they generalize. You will see them in the room on Clubhouse and say women are just not submissive these days. Modern women, right?
Yes, they say that too.
They just generalize. And that tells me, well, first of all, from the cases that we handle, you could just tell men get very defensive these days. The modern men get very defensive. Everything is an attack.
Yes.
And like the way you showed up with that conversation at first, if that's how you showed up to a conversation, there's a good chance that you've always shown up like that in your relationship. But a woman who's making a man feel like they're not submissive, there's a good chance that that man has been showing up opposite of that.
Right.
In the opposite, like you haven't been the man who says, hey babe, let's talk. I have some things I want to run by you by 11 o'clock. Let's just talk. There's a good chance you haven't been showing up that way. There's a good chance that you wouldn't even think as far as, like when your outlook is that it's the duty of a wife to submit. If that's your outlook, right? Not as a thing. I think a woman should make it a duty because it's your way of sowing seeds of greatness into your marriage. A woman should do that, right? But from the standpoint of a man, you should look at when she submits to you as a gift. Because if you don't look at it, the opposite of that is that you feel entitled. You don't feel like you should also give in to her. You don't feel like you should feed her soul. You don't feel like it's a direct response to how you show up. There's a certain type of man that seduces a woman to submit to him, to his leadership. There's a way you show up. So the way you showed up into that conversation earlier, if that's how you show up with every other aspect of providing, protecting, not just financially, emotionally, right? Mentally, if you're feeding your relationship that way, there's a good chance that your conversations won't be as tough.
They won't be toxic.
Right?
Right.
Because you've always shown that. But this issues comes up because there's a big crisis going on.
Yes.
Usually because he lost his position as a leader. And then the woman does not know that she should also be sowing seed of just make it a duty. That way you, like, when I use my phone, right? When it's time to do live stream on every Saturday, I set it as a duty. I don't have to show up, but I know that I need to give into this business in order for it to bring returns of both people's life transforming, but frankly, money. You see what I'm saying? So it depends on who is looking at it, right? As a man, I'm showing up to a conversation. Yes, you should show up like that. Now, when your insecurity gets tested, meaning she's disrespectful, she's not submissive, she's not showing up as submissive, how would you handle that, right? Now, I like how you handle disrespect. If she can't be in that space, you give yourself space.
Right.
You sow seed of space so she can figure that out, right?
Yeah.
I agree with that 100% because you can't be a doormat, because if you've lost it before, you can't lose it anymore. So you need to realize that you're not going to tolerate disrespect, at least not right now. We understand we've been disrespected in all kind of other ways of life, right? But right in my face, no, you're going to have to fix that tone. And I don't have to use my words. I will just allow you to keep it moving for now. You know?
Well, also too, just talking on what you just said, I understand myself that I'm prone to overreact. So then when I overreact and I'm going off, maybe it spirals all up into hate speech and we're just going off at each other. What then is my ability to circle back and have that conversation where she'll be able to hear what I'm saying then?
Time. That's number one.
It's not, because what's going to end up happening is I'm going to have to circle back and I'm going to have to be the one to make amends because I overreacted and I said some hurtful things.
Not
you
in
know
that
what I'm
moment.
saying?
Is it going to be in that moment?
No.
Okay.
No, hell no. Like you said, time.
Okay.
Then, right?
You
like, so a lot of that is just like, if it's not happening, shut it down.
Yeah. Shut it down. Yeah, because nobody's gonna act right in that moment because you get caught up in your emotions too.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if you're in a healthy relationship, that's part of the problem too. Is like we have this Hollywood image of what a relationship's supposed to be like, and that it's all roses and rainbows and unicorns, and that's not real. It's work, man. Like the only reason that I'm able to show up just like I did on a live on Instagram with you two is the big P word, man. Practice.
Practice.
Yeah, my wife and I schedule these conversations on a monthly basis to talk about these things because the things that are left unsaid build resentment.
It does.
And then that toothpaste cap is the reason for the catalyst for the blow up. It's the dish could have put away or the laundry wasn't folded or something. Yeah. And it hasn't anything to do with that. It has what you've been holding on to.
It's everything else that's been building up. Yeah.
Get that stuff out.
There's actually another stereotype that says that American men, actually, I think a lot of African women actually believe this, that American men are more romantic than African men.
Did you wake up romantic? Did you just fell out of the sky all romantic? Tell us how that worked. Did your mother, at 5 years old, say, "Hey, you buy flowers and"?
Yeah, I was a different kind of boy, man. I was that kid that started picking out all my own clothes when I was like 7. I started deciding how I was going to cut my hair. I've always loved talking to women. Always have had women friends. Always had girlfriends. So that wasn't ever a problem with me, man. I'm a lover, Some people tell me it's because I'm a Cancer.
Oh,
I don't know. I'm not into astrology, but you know,
me either.
hard on the outside and soft in the middle.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just, you know, my son's very similar too. Just a big bundle of love and just
How old is he?
he's 11. He'll
Oh
be
wow, that's a
12.
big boy.
He'll be 12 soon. So yeah,
Nice.
it's just yeah. But I think one of the things for me that I had to overcome was just, you know, like I said, I speak very highly and eloquently on saying the word no, and that's just because I had to practice that so much
You did
myself.
practice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's very important to tell people, let people know that this is what I always say. I say common sense is a terrible guide for marriage,
It is.
right? Because everyone has an advice or two for marriages and relationships, not just marriage, even relationships, period. Common sense is a terrible guide because what you consider common sense is basically something you value, maybe your own love language, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that just doesn't make any sense that you would just not buy me gift already 10 days before Mother's Day. 10 days. What about 2 days before? Can we squeeze that in, you know? And people will, the point is that people will take things personally because of what they feel, right? And they will turn that to, but that doesn't even make any sense. You hear them say that doesn't make any sense, right? And they bring that into
What
marriage.
about, but Ola, what about love is common sense?
That's common. They go dig up the dictionary meaning, which says a feeling of affection. You know, so we all have feeling of affection, but clearly we've all failed at love, right?
It transcends geography.
It
It
does.
transcends thought. Common sense is saying you're using your brain, but emotions live in the body. What is love? Love is an emotion. It's not a thought.
Yes.
Mm.
Love is also a decision. It's a choice. It's a
Yes,
verb.
a choice
It's an
too.
action, right? So,
Yeah.
like, I think that's the biggest misconception I think too a lot of people have with marriage is that it's a choice, man. And
Mm.
we're not here at the beginning of the start of man where people got married so that they could combine villages, and now all of our stuff is one for the reproduction and growing of human race.
Mhm.
Now it's a choice of I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person and
That's a
grow.
choice. You don't have to.
No, no.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, Lola, from my experience, I used to hang out with some Nigerian guys. I don't know if you guys know about public supermarkets or all, but they're down here in the southeast in Florida. And
No.
there's a
What
big
part of
group
South? How
of
far from Tampa are you?
I'm actually in Tampa.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Should
So
we move to Tampa?
really,
We're
Should
really
we?
thinking of Tampa. Yes.
you should.
Really.
All right.
You'll
Take your
love it.
words at it. We'll see.
Listen, but to what I was going to say is there was some Nigerian cats that I hung out with, and there was two out of the bunch that were super romantic.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, that's just my personal experience culturally.
Your experience.
You know, I just need to hang out with some more Nigerian guys and find
Right
out.
on.
You know what I mean?
Right on. Right on. Yeah, I'm not I wouldn't consider myself the most romantic, but I'm aware that when you're in a romantic relationship, it's definitely not common sense.
You try. You try.
Thank you,
You try
babe. I
very
appreciate
well,
that.
actually.
You know, it's not common sense. There like this is not just fly by night one night stand. This is
I'm
something
gonna give you some advice then.
please,
Lola.
please.
70s soul music.
70 what?
70s soul music.
Soul music. Okay, 70s soul music.
You
I like
love
the
music.
80s.
You love the 80s.
I like the 80s. You know,
Go
and
back.
I
Go
shove that
back.
down my throat sometimes.
Go back.
The 80s.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, man, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you for, I think conversations are great for this because our outlook can vary based on our stories, where we're coming from, our different uniqueness in journey,
Mm-hmm.
but we all want the 6 basic human needs.
Across board.
Love and connection is one of them. We all want it, right? So if it's something that's so basic and we want to thrive at it, we have to remain a student of it. We can't just be expert. We have to remain a student because, like you said earlier, there's geographical, there's generational, right? There is cultural, right? And this is the United States, which means there are people from all over the world, from the different corner of the world.
Yes.
So, and ignorance is not an excuse, right? I'm still holding men accountable, because especially if you claim that you want to lead, you can't in the same breath be complaining about your wife is disrespectful, doesn't trust you, and she's not submissive. In that same breath, you can't tell me you want to be a leader unless you want to be the opposite of it, right?
Yes.
Then we will
Yes.
hold her accountable, right? But if you want to, in the most traditional sense of it, you want to be a leader, right? You want to be respected, then you have to lead with everything. You sow the seeds first, and there's seasons, especially if you messed it up in the past. That means you have to be extremely patient. You mentioned patience earlier,
Mm-hmm.
how you were impatient when you are operating the low vibration,
Mm-hmm.
right? And alpha male, they don't run their mouth unless you're teaching. Okay? So let's give ourselves excuses here, right? Right?
At least you guys are not petty.
They're not petty.
Yeah.
They're not trying to
They're
keep
not
scores
petty.
with women.
Yeah.
You don't keep scores with women if you want to be the alpha in the relationship. And I know it's 2021, but it's not yet 2050. No, it's not equal yet. It's an unfair game still from men to women. So plus, we're talking about a greater reward on the other side. Seducing your woman, making her, see what I'm saying there? Making her submit, trust, and respect you. Like you're not waiting for her to do that. She doesn't have a choice. The way you show up, she doesn't have a choice than to deliver those 3 things with the way you show up as a man. And is there any duty for a woman here? Of course, they're humans too, right? You know, and I just respect women that they have so much to give already. And I've had enough experience to see that whatever you give a woman, she multiplies anyway, for the most part. Are there evil women out here? Yes, but I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about a typical woman. She's already a nurturer in every sense of it, right? So I want to keep my conversation. If you're in a toxic situation where your woman is very, very toxic, there are professional help for that. Still not an excuse to not show up as a leader. So I want you and I to continue the journey of, helping men see that they're still the leaders.
Yes.
You can drop the ball if you want, but you're still the leader. And, that confidence, bringing that confidence to the table, showing up like you're a leader. And I agree with what you said earlier, which is it's okay to not know.
Absolutely.
In fact, my biggest fear in life is that I know too much. I think I said that on your podcast, probably, right?
Yeah, man. Well, closing things out, I'll say this. One of the things that I loved about following the 2 of you is that it was a very similar experience to my wife and I, in the sense that you 2 took some time apart.
Yes.
And then, Ola, you started going really hard on working on yourself. And then, Lola, that became very attractive to you. And then, you're thinking about getting back together. But what you also said, which I love, was it also made me start looking at myself and the things that I needed to start working on too. And I think that more than anything, in my relationship as well, being the leader in the sense that I'm going to go full blast on being the best version of myself.
That's it.
Consistently inspires my wife to do the same. And that's the central foundation of our life and our marriage, is that all of the other madness, all of the other craziness, and all these other things, at the end of the day, can we just be together and say, were we better than yesterday?
That's
Are we
it.
better today than we were yesterday?
That's
And if
it.
we're both doing that and then holding a space for one another, we can get through anything.
Anything.
Yes,
Anything.
yes, absolutely. We're not going to let you go because I need to take your take. Not yet.
All right, all right.
Last one.
Soon. Okay.
Bill and Melinda parted after 27 years. What is your view on that? I
Yeah,
wanna know.
that's an interesting question, really. I want to know his views too. What's your views on that, man?
I'll throw some personal experience your way. My parents separated and divorced after 34 years of marriage.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then, when my mother called me, I said, thank God. I did. I mean, how many, and this is, and I know nothing about Bill and Melinda Gates' relationship, but I do know that unlike your relationship, unlike my relationship, there's a lot of relationships out there that are living in a long-term silent war.
Yes.
That's so true.
So I believe that if you've done that for long enough, it's beyond repair.
Yes, you're right.
Right? It's hard enough for folks like us. I mean, I'm almost 40 now. I'll be 39 this year. I started my transformation journey when I was 26. I can't imagine trying to do that in my 60s.
It's not going to work. It's going to be like pulling teeth.
Hard, right? So, I believe it's one of those things where you have to do whatever is best and healthiest for you, regardless of whatever the media, whatever family, whatever anyone on social media says. And again, I can't really imagine what it would be like married to Bill Gates, but I can't imagine that there's a lot of time in there for intimacy and connection.
Yeah.
If you schedule 5 minutes of every single part of your day.
Yeah.
So sometimes, his calling was much larger than marriage, I guess.
I realize that too.
Yes, I think so too.
He also grew up with two really strong parents. I know about their marriage, and they had a great marriage. His mother was an incredible woman.
But he's nothing like them, though.
No, he's a one of a.
He's out of this world.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times you do that because it's what you're supposed to do. I think that the reason why he did that too is, Melinda reminded him a lot of his mother. So there's all those aspects. Those are just some of the things I know from reading his story.
Again, a lot of things that were done out of fear. We know that he did not create Microsoft out of fear. We know that part because that's something that has changed the world as anybody knew it before 1995, right?
Yep.
But that marriage aspect of his life, maybe that's something he's done out of fear. And it's okay for people to get to a place because it's never too late to say, nah.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, you're giving energy into something that's not reciprocated. Whether or not they're both putting in, they feel like they're putting in the energy, but they're not receiving anything out of it.
Yes.
That's a hard place to be in for a long time.
It is.
And that's like pouring from an empty cup.
Yes.
It's terrible. It can't. There's only so much of that you can do as one human at the end of the day.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love your take, by the way.
So I know you thought you gave your last word earlier. What's the last word you will give for people in marriage?
Yes, please.
Oh man, I look at it like a dance.
A dance.
And if you've ever taken dancing lessons or you've ever been in any type of organized dance, right? Whether it's ballroom, salsa, any of that stuff, the lead flows back and forth. the movement flows. Sometimes it's hard. You got to dip her. Other times you're holding close. Other times you're far apart. Sometimes you're across the whole dance floor from them. But the reality is you're always in the dance with them.
You are.
You know, and as long as you remember that that's your partner, your dance partner, and that's what you're going through, you know, you can get through anything, because nothing's permanent other than death. So, you know, the other thing I would say, just from the man standpoint, because, you know, I'm all about that.
Right.
Is
the Successful Male podcast.
Yeah, you and I talked about this, Ola, is that there's a lot of confusion for men around love. And love is admiration. Love is holding a space for your wife to be herself and her truest
that's word.
authenticity, right?
Right.
And when you can do that and step into a spot of awe and curiosity for who she is and what it is that she wished to become, and not at all try and control outcomes or feel insecure of her growth and all these things, but really celebrate with her, you're going to be so attracted to your wife, and she's going to be so attracted to you that you just are not going to be able, you're going to have to beat her off with a stick in the bedroom, you know? So, you know, and it's the reverse for men. They think that like they need to get that first. And then it's like, no, if you're doing all that stuff and you're leading and you're being the man in the relationship, like everything's going to take off.
Yes. Yes. All right. One more last question.
Oh my God.
Clubhouse.
Yeah.
What's your take on Clubhouse? Because you're in this business.
Yeah.
What's your take on Clubhouse, where it is right now? What are you feeling about it?
Here's
you spend a lot of time there?
I did. And to be honest, I stepped away. And here's the reason why for me personally. I think like everything else, I got wrapped up into the buzz of everything, and I was on it 2 or 3 hours a night. And I took a step and listen, I made some amazing relationships, connections. You and I hooked up.
This is
and
one of
all
them.
these people, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never let that go. And you and I will always keep jamming, right? And there's a bunch of other people I'm doing that with. But the reality is like I said, I'm very clear about what my values are. And I tell people the greatest achievement that I've ever had in my whole life is breaking the generational context of inattentive fathers in my family. Right. So if I'm spending 2 to 3 hours a night on Clubhouse during the week trying to build my business, that's then taking away from that time I can spend with my son.
Yes.
And after about a month of doing that, I checked in with my values, and I said, I'm not going to be sitting on my deathbed saying I wish I spent more time on Clubhouse in 2021. But I probably may be thinking about all the times that my son was 11 and how important it was for me to show up for him.
You know, guess what checked me?
What?
This self checked me.
Wait, what do you mean?
This self checked me, and to be frank, you know, I'm on the same page. Maybe explain it a little bit different way, but it's very simple. The most valuable asset we have is time. So if I could spend 10 hours with you here right now, I'm okay with it, because beyond this moment, other people get to consume it, and it continues to work. But something that I'm putting so much into, certain amount of energy that is not documented, it's just not worth it.
It was a lot of energy in our private space. I felt like I had a million people in my living room, and I don't know, it's kind of toxic.
Yeah.
Well, you two. Well, I was just telling my wife yesterday that, you know, you two you were going in.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, you guys were talking about some real shit on there that you were really going through. Okay. and look at how Lola's looking like, yeah. And I didn't always want to bring it up.
Yeah.
Me and Ola are like, hey, just throw everything out there. Who cares?
we spent some time there, and
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, maybe another TikTok, but it was missing that one element, which is it's not being documented.
It's true, man.
Then the audience is everything. If you know anything about marketing, the wrong audience for the most part. So
Yep.
sorry,
Yes.
and when we put out a lot of content on YouTube, on our blog and stuff like that, and people come to them when they need them, and I like that better. We established some relationships as well, even with
Yes,
clients.
some good
You know,
relationships.
but in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at overtime, when you're looking at spending time with family, we still go there. Like she said, she went there earlier today, right? So, but the idea of locking in time and scheduling on blocking my calendar for that, it's not worth it. Yeah,
It's not
yeah. For
productive.
leisure, as my Netflix, sometimes when I'm away from my wife, it's just I get a lot of insights from there, what to write about next, what to create content around. I get a lot of insights for that. That's much more. So now I'm getting from it, as opposed to me pouring so much into. It just becomes another toxic relationship. You know.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not cool. But yeah, that was the last question for you, and we had such a good
Yes.
time
Thank
having
you
you
so
here, man.
much.
Thank you. Yeah, I did too, man. You guys are awesome. I'm a huge
Yes,
Thank
fan.
you. We
yes.
So keep
appreciate
jamming.
Let's stay in touch. We're definitely at some point we're going to bring you back again and continue this conversation. But thank you so much, man.
Talk
Our
soon.
honor.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye.
Take
Nice
care.
meeting you.
You too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Awesome, people.
Mm.
That was a good
That was
conversation.
very, very insightful.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was a good conversation. We had a good time. And let me see here. I thought I saw something. Okay, no, not really. Yeah,
Okay.
that was a good conversation. So we try to come here on Saturdays. We don't do clubhouse session anymore. Sorry, you just heard that. Just in case you're a clubhouse person.
Ow, ow,
Ooh, ooh,
ouch, baby.
ooh.
You
Sorry,
almost took
baby.
my arm out. Oh my
Oh, I'm
gosh.
so sorry.
It's okay.
See my life. All right. So please, if you're on YouTube and Facebook, subscribe, like, and share the content. Um,
Thumbs up.
thumbs up to help the algorithms show the content. If you really like this, you can help us push it out there by giving it a thumbs up on any one of these platforms and share with your friends and family. But even if you can't share it, just the fact that you just hit the thumbs up and show the post wherever you're watching, show it some love, will really help the content spread even faster.
Yes,
We
yes,
are trying to
yes.
build a community around having this kind of conversation. We will continue to bring guests. Also, when you hit the subscribe button or you will also get notified easily
When we go like,
when we do go live. We will try to show up on at 2 p.m.
we'll try.
Eastern Standard Time. This is
Yes,
the, I mean, we've
we'll
been trying. I
try.
mean, it's the 26th episode. You
We'll
know,
try to start on time.
we did start on time. They saw our face on time.
Yes.
All right. So show some love. Marriage relationships, all types of relationship, not just marriage or romantic. Relationship with your father, your mother, your siblings, your children. Right? It's actually the same issues across board,
Yes.
except the marriage where sex is involved. But believe it or not, at the very core, it's the same thing. And we want to continue to have this conversation. Why? Because there's no end all be all. There's no absolutes, and everyone's case is
Just
different
different.
from
Yes.
people to people in terms of application. So it's very, very important to listen to as many examples and scenarios as possible, so that you can make your own truth, your own methods, your own um, rules out of it. But you get
More
insights.
like a guideline, not rules per se.
No rules. There's no
Rules
rules.
don't work
Yeah, they don't work
in
because
romantic relationships.
exactly because those rules can expire tomorrow because you're presented with a new case altogether, and you're stuck on. Oh yeah, but you said this yesterday, and it may be applicable in a different way
Yes.
tomorrow.
Yes.
But if you listen to as many scenarios as possible, because it's an art and not an exact science like the Kevin Samuels like to make it, right? You have enough cases to know how to handle these things, you know. But in this past week, just so you know, on our YouTube channel, we created another YouTube channel called Marriage Issues. Go search for it and subscribe to it. And that's where we're live right now on YouTube.
Yes.
We separated it from Lola and Ola because of the algorithms, because that one is growing from an organic standpoint.
Right.
But we wanted to separate things so that we make sure that we're capitalizing on how the algorithms like to do things.
Right.
On Facebook, if you like Facebook, follow us on there. Facebook is very stingy with their algorithms when it comes to the feed. It is what it is, right? But if you like it, they will consider it valuable. The algorithms will know that it's valuable, and then they will show it to more people that are actually following it. Believe it or not, there are people that follow us and they just don't show it to them because there's not enough engagement on the video. So what you need to do is just if you like what we're doing here, just go find Lola and Ola everywhere and just like 3 videos all together. Just click like on them, follow, subscribe. If you're here on Instagram, also do the same thing. If you're on Facebook, on YouTube, that would be 2 channels. One is Marriage Issues and the other one is Lola and Ola. This last week we put together some really, really nice content up there. Just in case you haven't seen, we have Kevin Samuels, high value men versus high quality men up there.
Right.
We have Melinda and Melinda Gates, right? We have that also, our opinion on that. We have a very nice, concise, short 10 minutes video on that topic.
Right.
We also had what else? Latoya Forever's 10 lessons from the divorce.
Yes.
We also talked about that. We also have some generic topics. Our biggest video right now is on attraction, on signs, 5 signs that she's no longer attracted to you. That's a big video up there as well. We also have video on what to do if she loses respect for you.
Yes.
We also talk about if she lost interest. We also talked about that. We have like over 150 videos up on Lola and Ola on YouTube that you can watch at your leisure. But we love doing this so that you can always come back on demand and watch. You know, but we do this live session. If you engage, if you like live sessions at 2 p.m. I just wanted to bring you up to speed really quickly. If you're watching me right now, your love is much, much appreciated. Yes. And the way you can do that is go to all 3 platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, 2 channels, Marriage Issues and Lola and Ola, and like on the video, subscribe, and things like that. If you like topics about marriage and divorce and relationships, let's talk about the positive ones, right?
Yes.
Anything else, babe? You good?
Thank you so much. That's
Sama Buka, thank you so much.
We appreciate you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
And happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers out there and the mothers to be and the aspiring mothers.
Yes.
Enjoy your Mother's Day. And you guys have a lovely weekend.
All right. Bye now.